Hello, and welcome to Talk Landscape, episode 7. Thank you so much for joining us live. My name is Andrea Chavarri from the Global Landscapes Forum, and I'm so excited about today's topic because not only are we talking about how incredible forests are for, for cultural value, for people, for nature, and for the planet, but also about the enormous potential of forest and forest-based ecosystems to transform our economies into sustainable paradigms that not only view these landscapes as places to extract from, but rather as a potential opportunity to create the economic transformation that we need through innovative financial mechanisms, through sustainable forest management. And to discuss that, I have three incredible guests joining us from Kenya. I would like to present Beria Leimona from C4ECRAF. She is the global theme leader of climate change at C4ECRAF, joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome, Lei. How are you?
Good, very good. Thank you, Andrea.
Amazing. I would also like to present Abdelkrim Marzouk, who is the president of the Ifran Model Forest located in Morocco. Welcome, Abdelkrim. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
And last but not least, our third guest is Tony Ventre, who is the general secretary of the Mediterranean Model Forest Network. So welcome to the three of you. Welcome to Talk Landscape and welcome to the audience. So get ready, ask any questions that you may have throughout the conversation. Tell us where you're watching from. We are reading all of your comments and questions over Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And let's get started. My first question would be to you, Tony. Um, can you please give us, first of all, a quick introduction of a model forest? How does it work? What does it mean? And tell us also a bit about the landscape that the model forest network in the Mediterranean encompasses. Over to you, Tony. We hear you loud and clear. If you could tell us a little bit about where you come from, the Mediterranean Model Forest Network, its principles, and how does it work over there with sustainable forest management?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Thanks a lot for introducing me. Yeah,
We can hear you loud and clear,
yeah.
Tony. So if you could first
Sorry.
walk us through the Mediterranean Model Forest Network. I'm so curious, and I'm sure our audience is also super curious about what a model forest network even is.
Yeah, thanks. But so I have an echo in my. Uh,
Oh, are you having audio issues, Tony? I think we can get those started. If you could just make sure to close all of your tabs. If you have any tabs open, we can move over to you. Are you able to hear me okay, Tony? If not, maybe I can ask my colleague to help you sort out this issue
yeah,
internally
thanks.
while I'll move with Abdelkrim Marzouk, who's also working in the Mediterranean Model Forest Network. So, Abdelkrim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you
and
for having me.
hear from Tony and the amazing work that the folks at the Mediterranean Model Forest Network are doing. Please let us know a little bit about your landscape. You are based in Morocco and you are the president of the Ifran Model Forest within the Mediterranean Network. So first of all, could you describe the landscape for us a little bit? How does the forest look like over there in North Africa? And also, what are the Mediterranean Model Forest Network principles? How do they apply for you? And how have you been working with them? Over to you, Abdelkrim.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, for having me. So first, the model forest of Ifran, which is I'm the president of the association, is part of the network of the Mediterranean Forest Network, which is also part of the international network model that's based in Canada. So about Tony will talk a little bit about the philosophy of the model forest, which is a way. It's not just a protected area, but it's a large scale management where you have population and forest interact together, where you have the bottom, the lower up approach in terms of forest management, and it's also about income generation by the population. For the North African ecosystem, it's one of its characteristics. It's characterized by being arid, very resilient, and immense ecological value. So you can find different species from the whole oak, cork oak, and also various juniper and pine species. For the ecological patterns, so you have it helps to regulate the water. It's a water regulation, and also it's a biodiversity hotspot in Morocco. Morocco, out of the 4 countries or the 5 countries in North Africa, is the one well populated with the trees. We have about 22 million hectares of trees. Of course, those trees and forest, they has some threats. It's fragile ecosystem as it's very intense pressure from climate change, and we're all experiencing this. We have overgrazing inland, and also we have social erosion, and also some human pressure. To be precise, for the region where we live in the province of Ifran, which is one of the 74 provinces in Morocco. It's within the national park of Ifran. It's most of it, is covered. Half of it is covered by forest, different type of forests that exist. But most of it is the cedar. We are in the very highly populated area about the cedar. You have few, lakes, and also karstic plateau in terms of soil, and then the Alpine widow, and winter we have snow also. That's a little bit the characteristics without going into further detail. That's what it looks like.
And thank you for painting such a visual, picture of what the forests in Morocco look like. Um, and now I wanted to welcome our guest, Lei, because I do want to ask her. Lei has been working. She's usually based in Bogor, Indonesia. Now she's joining us from Nairobi, Kenya, over at the C4E campus. Lei, welcome to the episode. And I wanted to ask you, what economic values can forests provide beyond the usual extractivist models throughout your vast experience in with smallholder financing, with other types of income sources generation from forests?
Yes, thank you, Andrea, for having me. As mentioned by Abdul Karim, that the Mediterranean landscape are a very rich landscape, yeah, and then they also have traditional agro-silvopastoral system uh, coming from different type of countries as well as across the region. And Abdul Karim has been kindly mentions about lots of agricultural commodities that can be harvested from the landscape. He mentions about trees, crops, and grazing. Yeah, those are the livelihood that can be tapped by the local community. However, beyond that, tangible or marketable commodities, we are also talking about ecosystem services. Ecosystem services, especially what's so-called the regulating services, those are the benefits that coming from ecosystem that are somehow being available for us as the beneficiaries. For example, soil fertility, regulate water flows, nurture biodiversity, and not to forget also the pollination. Yeah, how these little bees, those are very important to ensure that the whole system can produce both the agricultural commodities as well as good ecosystem where human can live in a good health and also good well-being.
And with growing threats like climate change and for example wildfires that affect um, most intensely the Mediterranean region, Abdul Karim, could you tell us how these threats, how these impacts have been felt in the economic activities of the people who depend on the forests in Morocco?
Yes, lately for the last 6 years in sequence, we have a low precipitation in the whole country in Morocco, and we have really high shortage in terms of water. And as you know, irrigation in Morocco that consumes about 70% of the water in general. So you can imagine how much agriculture is being affected, and then we have a huge transformation in terms of the type of agriculture. We have moved from the traditional way of doing agriculture to more precise agriculture, more irrigated agriculture, where you save between 80 to 90% of the quantity of water and then produce more. So you have big farmers in Morocco under the national initiative, which we call Le Maroc Vert or the Green Morocco, that have benefited from the way of managing the water in a very proficient way. But we still have at the traditional level people hit by first by the lack of precipitation one, and then the drop off of the aquifer means that the wells that were at the level of 50 meter, 100 meter, now people are searching for water at the level of 200 meter, getting more the cost in terms of using more energy. But there is, I think, adaptation and resilience in terms of the local economy by mixing between harvesting and then livestock and then moving to other species that demands less water and they can adapt to more aridity.
And okay, now that we know that there is definitely an impact, there are definitely impacts that are being felt by the communities that depend economically on these forests, like you said. Um, how would we be able to actually compensate the people who are taking care of the forests? And for this question, I would like to give the floor to you, Beria. So you've worked with, let's say, smallholder financing. You've worked with forest-based financial services or financial mechanisms. Sorry, how can we marry the how can we marry climate action with the creation of sustainable livelihoods, in your opinion?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. So first of all, we need to understand that somehow smallholders and forest-dependent communities, they are not only the beneficiaries of these ecosystem services, they are also custodians. Yeah, in this case, that through their traditional farming system and the way they manage the landscape, they contribute into the forest and landscape conservation and restoration. And as mentioned by Abdul Krim, that somehow with having a healthy landscape, for sure that this will contribute into the sustainability of the ecosystem services, right? In this case, it means that economically we need to provide rewards, payment, compensation to these people for maintaining the landscape that may benefits not only themselves but also people outside the landscape itself, right? For example, in the case of the watershed functions, yeah, there are lots of water-based company that benefiting from healthy watershed, right? There are also hydropower, mini hydro, that they can only operate when the supply of water are being maintained. And the water being maintained by people who lives in the upstream area can ensure that through their farming practices, the landscape is healthy and also produce continuous ecosystem services.
Abdelkrim, does this resonate, or do any of these approaches resonate to the work that you've been applying, to the initiatives that you've been doing, and any innovations that you might have been developing over at the IFRAN Model Forest? And if not, are there any other innovations in terms of generating sustainable livelihoods beyond just extracting the resources from the forests? And before, sorry, Abdelkrim, before I go over to you, I want to remind everyone in the chat that we see your comments. We see that we have people joining over from Nigeria, from Ethiopia. We have people over in Cameroon joining us. So feel free to ask your questions and your comments, and we'll get them. We'll get to them right in a minute. So now over to you, Abdul Karim. Before this quick,
Yeah,
after this shout out.
sure. Yeah, about the actions, the tradition that was before is that people just tend to extract things from the forest, including wood, including harvesting, including that overgrazing and all of that. At least in the region that I know, which is part of our forest model area, so we set what we call the association that are overseeing the forest, and they are being paid by the Ministry of Agriculture in Morocco. So these are association. Basically, what they do, they make sure that there is no an abuse of the forest. Only the one who have a right to use the forest are using it. Plus, that sometimes some reserves are closed for use for the purpose of regeneration of the biodiversity. So they get paid an amount of money by being the guards of the forest, and then that money is being used to feed their livestock home or in their places. For our one of the actions that we have been doing since 2010 is that we have some very good project that we initiate in the province of Ifran. So the first one was the introduction in 2011 of the agriculture of the saffron. The saffron, which is a plant, which is a plant aromatique medicinal, which is a medical plant. It's a red plant that's being used for cooking, especially. It's very expensive. So we did introduce it here from another region from Morocco in the High Atlas. It's about 1,000 kilometers from where we are now. That was one. So a lot of population in Ifran, they did adopt this and they're producing it and then selling it. So that's the first project. The second project is that through a help of the IDRC in Canada, so they helped us to build a model on how to keep less livestock and then produce more of of meat. Sorry. So then we showed to people, to herders, on how to keep a small number of sheep, but produce the quantity of meat higher without intervening with the forest. That's one experience. We did publish this already. We have a book that shows on how to do and the procedure and one another article. The third thing that we did also is that we showed to the local population how to use a number, I think between 15 to 20 medical plants, on how to grow them, and then how to produce to produce them, to package them, and to sell them in all different aspects of life. Then the last thing, and that's the big project that we're working on, is how to transform the wood or the dry wood that we can find in the forest, to bring it as small chips that can be used for heating for the local population. So that's, you can derive all of this from the forest without hurting anything in the ecosystem, in the forest ecosystem.
Thank you so much. These sound like they're really going beyond just you know extracting raw resources and actually transforming them, actually putting in capacity, putting in input into creating more value for these communities. Thank you for this nice overview. I want to give us all a quick yeah, just want to show some comments and questions from the audience, just in case Lay or Abdel Karim can comment on any of this. We have a question from Ayush Salami, who wants to know how can we tackle invasive species of flora and fauna? Maybe Abdel Karim, you've had any interesting approaches to tackling invasive flora and fauna species in Morocco? That's question one. And the second question that we have from Mudazir Ali watching over Facebook, they want to know more about softscapes and how they work in our environment. So we have two questions from our audience, one on invasive species and how we tackle them, and the other one on softscapes. Would any one of you, Lay or Abdul Karim, would like to take one of these?
Okay. I think I can take the first one
Okay.
that has to do with invasive species, fauna and flora. So in Morocco, you know that's maybe different from other countries around the world, that the we don't have private forest. All the forest belongs to the state, and given that the forest belongs to the state, it's a state domain, and the administration that runs the forest in general is what we call in Morocco in French the les eaux et forêts, which is l'ANEF, l'Agence Nationale des Forêts, des eaux et des forêts. So, which means that's just simply the forest office that manages all the forests in Morocco. So they have a plan. They have engineers that deals with those specific invasions. They do have program, either it's fauna or flora, all over Morocco. We have about 22 million hectares that deals with it. And each time there is regular studies that being done at the level of the forest each time, and there is a calendar and how they intervene in each area, because species are different depending are you in the north or in the middle of the country or in the south. The fauna is different, the flora is different. So they do have this program. It's not up to the association who runs this, but it's up to the state that does that.
Amazing. I hope that answers more your question, Ayush. Our second question of softscapes, would you have Lay an answer to that, or Abdel Karim?
Yes, Andrea, I can take that question. So
Please.
actually, this is really close to what C4 eCraft is doing. Yeah, so C4 eCraft, we as the research organization, we are focusing on using trees, forests, agroforestry landscape to address major issues like climate change, biodiversity loss, and food security, including how to improve the livelihood of the people. Yeah, so we are talking about softscape. I assume that this is not the hardscape as the opponents of the softscape. And softscapes, it will be about trees, shrubs, yeah, and then you can also talking about soil, mulch, compost, and then all the living green walls that we are interacting with. So in the case of the softscape, for sure that this is a very important component if we are talking about climate change. Yeah, I just had conversations on what would be the negative tipping points, yeah, of the climate change. The idea is now indeed that having a softscape or tree-based system in our climate change solutions have kind of multifunctionality. Yeah, this is not only about reducing the climate change emission, but also it's talking about biodiversity. Yeah, it's also about maintaining the watershed function. It's about how to ensure that there will be less drought, less flood, but more water available for the people. Yeah. So indeed, when we are talking about climate change, it can be easily um, targeted by only focusing on, for example, the energy sector by technology, right? But we will lose this multifunctional landscape, especially the softscape, the tree, yeah, the nature-based solutions as part of the solution. Yeah, so I would say that, yeah, indeed, that although the science behind how trees can support climate change in direct way and how to ensure the community, if you remember well, we are talking about a local community as the stewardship of the landscape, planting trees, maintaining the softscapes, right? It will be complicated and difficult, and maybe Abdul Karim and Tony also know how difficult to maintain such sustainability engaging with the local community. But I would say that will be premium actions that we need to do, right? Understanding this in the multifunctionality of ecosystem services.
Now, I really want to connect your both of your answers to a question that I just received in the chat from Getachew Payene. How can we sustain the benefit of community and trusted ownership? So let's keep that question. And I also want to connect it with any challenges that you may have seen on your extensive work dealing with or researching into payments for ecosystem services, carbon markets, and other financial mechanisms. So, what are the biggest challenges in ensuring that these mechanisms actually benefit smallholder farmers and local forest communities and forest stewards rather than just making them into intermediaries? So, how can we, like our guest in the chat put it, how can we sustain the benefits of community and trusted ownerships? I would love to give the floor back to you, Beria, Lei, and over then to Abdel Karim for any follow-up comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So the most important one when we are talking about payment for ecosystem services is trust. Yeah, there should be trust among the communities themselves as the stewards of the landscape, as well as trust from the community with the external, what's so-called buyers of beneficiary that will at the end provide them with certain payment, rewards, or compensation. Yeah, because first of all, when we are talking about landscape, we need to talk about collective actions. Yeah, it means that there should be certain governance being set up to ensure that everyone in the landscape can invest together in promoting any management, landscape management that will at the end providing ecosystem services. So it means that you cannot depend on a single farmer to do good, yeah, but it should be the whole landscape to be good. It means that this inclusive governance, right, commitment, shared responsibility, decision making process, those are quite become a strong components of the PES. Yeah, because again, it's not only depends on certain plots, but the whole landscape needs to get in action. That would be
Absolutely.
the first. Yeah, and then the second one, when we are talking about ecosystem services, when you plant tree, it needs 10 years, right? Either to bear fruits or to produce what's so-called ecosystem services. And then there will be like a gap grace period where nothing happens, but it is in the process of producing something, right? So here, what I want to highlight about the trust from the beneficiaries that somehow if you do good and invest in the landscape from the beginning, and then you need to wait, right? And then you should trust that process until this landscape really work for you, producing good and services that will somehow benefit you in the long term. That will be my
Now,
this one. And
thank you, Lei. Now, I want to go back to your point on working as a collective and the importance of looking beyond individual efforts, because I want to know more about how these principles are being applied in the work that the Mediterranean Model Forest Network is doing. So, what are these principles? Why do we need a model forest network? And how do these principles apply in your case, Abdel Karim? I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, for any sustainable approach, I mean, that's why I think the model forest it's operating in all over the world in many countries is that there is a philosophy behind it. It's not just any model, but there is a philosophy that all the projects are being discussed today with the local population. So the local population do adhere to the project itself. We have many projects, and in for the last 15 years, I think we have done between 20 to 30 projects, all of them funded by international, organizations. But the first thing we do before doing anything, we need to make sure that the local population that lives in the surrounding area of the forest or in the forest, they do adhere to the project. We work with them together. We design the project itself so they know what we will be doing and how much it will take and when they will get the fruit of their effort, and then the gap of time they need to wait and how much it will cost to the this. And we always put something that the communities will help with. So, for example, if we want to plant trees, for example, so we will buy the trees, we will do most of the financial aspect, but we will ask them to do some work. So they think that by doing that, they're sure that what they have today, it belongs to them. So you need to have this ownership. So they need to own the project. This is very important. And then when they own the project, so if we need to have some example, let's say some people who will look after those trees, we hire the population from the local population. So we have the guards from the local population and then we pay them. And then we give them a lot of technical assistance through the Ministry of the Forest, and by doing that we make sure that the outcome will be almost at 90%, 95%. The population will take care of the project, will carry the project, will benefit from it, and then it will be sustainable. So it's not a top-down approach, but it's bottom-up approach with a lot of meeting with people. I remember that for each of our projects we spend time talking to the population, sorting out things, train them before even we start anything on the ground. Because when you start working on the ground, then you need to make sure that it's sustainable. And one of the challenges we always find is that when we talk to the population, each one will say, "Okay, what do I have in it? Tell me what is the outcome." And they say, "Look, this is not individual but it's collective. You guys need to work collectively and then you will harvest something collectively, and then you need to sustain it because the association will launch the project, and it's up to you to continue the journey and then to make sure that it's working and it's sustainable."
Amazing. And I'm so happy to have Tony back despite the technical issues. Welcome back, Tony. Um,
Thanks. Thanks.
we hear you loud and clear. I hope there isn't any more echo on your side. So, just to recap for you and for everyone in our audience, thank you for sharing your questions. We've talked about trust. We've talked about other ecosystem services that forest landscapes and softscapes can provide. And now we are going into the issue of sustainable forestry management. So, before going over to you, Tony, I want to highlight the fact that Abdel Karim shared that these projects, and also Lei, you said that these projects take time. So, how do we make sure that communities who depend on forests can get um, short-term rewards for the work that they are doing? Over to you, Tony, for your insights on sustainable forestry management. What kind of benefits do these approaches have for communities from your work in the Mediterranean Model Forest Network?
So thanks, Andrea, and I'm so sorry because these technical issues. You know that I think that Abdel Karim already said about our approach, like model forest process. So, and it's what I can say regarding the what way the communities around the Mediterranean basin, so all our regional network approach to the sustainable forest management and landscape management uh, is a way to face all the challenges that we have in this area, because so in more than in other places where the value timber remain more or less acceptable for the economy. In the Mediterranean area, we have different problem because we have a so different situation by the point of view of social, economic, and environmental. But for sure, we need to improve the capacity to valorize the ecosystem services. At this point regarding the valorization of ecosystem services is completely related with sustainable forest management. Are not a race. It's not a race between the two different objectives, but we have as communities, and when I talk about community, I mean mainly the rural communities, because so in we have a different situation in the Mediterranean basin, because in the North Bank, so in the European countries, we are suffering about the lack of management of forest management and landscape management, because for social change, economic change, since the 50s of the last century, uh, we really have a lack of people in the rural areas, and so we can't have any kind of management of the forest and of the landscape without people. So, and in the south and the east banks of Mediterranean basin, we have a different situation. But for sure, Abdelkrim already said, because maybe that what happened in the North Bank in the last decades happened in the south too, and so the 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 main goal that we have to to do is to avoid the same problem that have already faced in the past in the North Banks. And so the sustainable forest management and sustainable landscape management mean to find the way with through policy, through policies, and through the awareness regarding the public opinion regarding the role that the ecosystem services and landscape have for all the society, and to in this way maybe that we will be able to give a value to the ecosystem services more and more than now.
Thank you, Tony. Now, I wanted to ask Lei, how do we actually bridge the gap between the research and all the knowledge that we're sharing today, for example, on the value of ecosystem services? So, how do we bridge the gap on the research that scientists like at C4ECRAF are doing and the actual implementation of these financial mechanisms of sustainable forestry management solutions? What do you see in the future that gives you a way out or gives you hope for bridging this gap?
Thank you, Andrea. That's a very interesting question. In our case within C4ECRAF, what we do, we have continuous awareness raising with the various multi-stakeholder, starting from the local community with the subnational government, national government, even now, very intensively with the private sector and impact investors. Yeah, for to help them in understanding what are the science behind ecosystem services, and also the consequences of any unsustainable practices that may occur in the future. Yeah, because here what we want to also anticipate, it's not only reaction, yeah, but also precautionary disaster events in the future, right? Because sometimes people just realize needs to take actions when any big floods or long droughts comes, and then now we are faced with the high temperature and very harsh climate change. Then people react. Yeah, I mean, also providing with the understanding that they need to be aware before any of a disaster, natural disaster, or due to human actions needs to be done. And then for sure that in this case we are also facilitating what's so called the multi-stakeholder forum, yeah, and then help them in making decision. Yeah, so using our science to ensure that when they make decision, there are evidence that will back up and to be measurable as well as quantifiable. For example, um, in some of the tropical countries, as you know, that now oil palm or monoculture, timber, those things, that this has a very high lucrative economic value, right? And then sometimes when making decision, government may only consider one aspect of the yeah, only the financial one. Having our knowledge on how to link between ecosystem services with land use management and with the economic value, we can provide them with different scenarios. Okay, if you change all your landscape to monoculture, and then what happens with your ecosystem services? What happens with your water? Yeah, what happens with to your biodiversity? And then if somehow retain most of your forest and only change a bit of your land cover to something very lucrative and sometimes unsustainable, what would be the consequences to your economy? Yeah, so providing those decision making negotiation support tools, that will be the way we bridge between the science, actions, and later to the policy. Yeah, so that's how C4E works in this domain, Andrea.
And how does the Mediterranean Model Forest Network apply this engagement with multiple stakeholders? How has your experience been, Tony? Maybe you can share a little bit about how the network is able to engage different stakeholders for sustainable forest management and looking beyond the extractive value of forests, but actually quantifying and looking at the value that forests provide, such as ecosystem services. Sorry, you're muted, Tony.
Yeah, for sure, because the engagement of communities is the one of the pillar of the modern forest principles, and so the, the capacity to engage the communities is the first aim that each one of us um, have every day in our work. So regarding to valorize the ecosystem service behind the timber value that as I said before, we have some example in the Mediterranean, and so I could I can provide so the experience of the PACA model forest in France, the Provence Alpes Côte d'Azur, in the south of France, where they work a lot regarding the a study on adaptation climate change, but they are promoting the commercial exploitation of this species like considered the usually considered minor, no, like a strawberry tree. And in this case, they creating a sector involving all players in the forest industry. They involve a forest owner, processor, forest management association, and so in order to exploit the all parts of the species. So they use foliage, wood and foliage for cosmetics, flowers for beekeeping, fruits in pastry making, etc., and so on. And really, even the bark has its own commercialization process. But so example like the paca we have also in the other modern forests, maybe that a very different example that we can provide is about the Montagne Fiorentina model forest in Tuscany region, where they are working about the Forza project, which is a project about forestry and health for human being. And so they work in this project with the National Research Council and the health regional and national health service, social cooperatives, forest owner, farmers, environmental guides. So a very wide partnership in order to make the first four trails codified by the research regarding the different types of trails where the research institute measured the level of terpenes in order to have to create a protocol, an health protocol to provide to the all citizens. But this means not only for an ecosystem services for the citizen, but also a way to show in what's the importance of the forest management, and also to put together different categories which work in the forest and in the landscape, because usually these different kind of categories are the focus on the its own specific objective, and in this way we lose the overview of the management to provide service to all the categories and all the society.
Exactly. Now, my next question goes to Abdelkrim. Could you share with us maybe one key lesson on engaging different communities in sustainable forestry management while also creating economic opportunities?
I think just as a follow up to what Tony said, I think one of the main elements in terms of engaging the community, it goes from the first the from the design of any project, and I think that's the bottom line of anything here that has to do with engaging the population, because you have a multiple layer in terms of the decision making for engaging the community. First, you have the community, which is basically the people who are using the forest and living next to the forest. Then you have local authorities also. Then you have all the stakeholders. And then you have the leadership at the level of the province or of the region. Then you have the president of the communes. Then you have all of this. So all of them should line up within this philosophy. And this takes a lot of time, and we have experienced this in the last 15 years. I think now in Ifran, I would say we're really at the optimum time to have everyone speaking the same language. We have been invited to almost any action at the level of the government here in the province to speak on behalf of our approach, being successful, being engaged. We have seen the results. We have seen the project being duplicated, either it's reforestation, or it's growing, or new plantation, or it's a transformation of wood. I think there is sometimes it's difficult to gain trust from the population first, then gain trust from local authorities, then to gain the trust from whoever is leading the society, and then you need also the trust of the international organizations that are funding the projects. When you do a project, you need to report scientifically about the project, financially about the project. You need to, the opening of the project, it should be public. The closing should be public. Then showing the results, then showing where we're heading with this, why are we doing with this, who benefit from this, etc. So all of this, it should be shown, and it should be shown also through some democracy in terms of your approach. And you should include gender, you should include people with disabilities, should include very poor people, medium, or sizes are different. So all of this. So you need to have a global, if you want, you have a global approach for a successful. So you need to do a lot of sociology and a lot of forestry as well. So both of them, they work together to make sure that your project will be successful. People will adhere to what you're saying, adhere to your philosophy. You need to explain it to people. You just don't go show up the next morning, you wake up and then you start a project in the forest. That's not how it works. You need to lay it down, to talk about it, introduce it, show its importance, show the implications. People will trust you and then will go with you. I think that's what the major lesson that we learn from any project. Today, we're very happy with Tony and our network. Though any project that comes to the region, we can implement it because simply we have to trust all those partners and then stakeholders.
And before we run over to our last round of questions, I want to quickly show this question from Johannes Gielan Regasa, watching over on LinkedIn. They ask, what models exist in sub-Saharan Africa? I hope that means sub-Saharan Africa, for community level decision making on, for example, tree planting, crop selection, or soil conservation. I would like to take this question over to you, Lei, if you have any examples on community level decision making that could answer Johannes's question, or otherwise, if not in sub-Saharan Africa, just in general, from your work in C4 ICRAF. You're muted, Lei, I think.
Sorry for that. Yes, thank you, Andrea, for the question. So, well, within C4 ICRAF, we promote what's so-called the agroforestry. Yeah, that's also something, I guess, answering your questions. How to ensure that by promoting sustainable farming practices, the community not only having short-term benefits, but also long-term benefit, yeah? So that's why that's the beauty of agroforestry, because agroforestry combines different types of crops in a landscape, both annual and perennial crops. Yeah, so it means that in practice, you can you can find coming from only grasses like crops, yeah, or and coffee, cacao, timber trees, and also it can be combined with livestock, for example, yeah. And as you know that annual trees, they produce quicker compared to the perennial one, yeah. So it means that having this agroforestry system and C4 ICRAF research has proved that agroforestry has been able becoming a multifunctional landscape component. Yeah, it produces commodities as well as ecosystem services. And with this planting calendar within the agroforestry, so farmers can have different produces along the year, yeah, coming from different products coming from the system. So coming back to the South Saharan Africans models, so indeed that we promote agroforestry that contextual to each different landscape. Yeah, so you may for sure that well, I'm happy that if you can visit our website, yeah, so and then you can find a different models of agroforestry coming from Sub-Saharan Africa and then as well as Southeast Asia and Latin America. Yeah, because when we begin to have a certain pilot is ETC for aircraft, one of the important things is to understand the landscape. Yeah, understanding the biophysical as well as socioeconomic aspect of the landscape. So when projects are being designed, it should be contextual. Yeah, one of the something that I like coming from the 4 aircraft, we are talking about right trees in right places for the right purposes and the right time. So yeah, maybe it's a bit general, but maybe can answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lei. I'm sure that can be super helpful for our audience there. Before we move on to final messages and final questions, I would like to remind you all that you can subscribe to our newsletter for Talk Landscape so you don't miss any of our monthly podcasts. So you can either scan the QR code over there or check the link that we'll be sharing on the chat soon, so you don't miss any of our Talk Landscape episodes and news. Stay tuned for more conversations. Now back to our guests with the last round of questions or final messages. Let's say we've had a super engaging, super insightful conversation on how we can build long-term trust with forest communities in order to create sustainable livelihoods for the long term, while also tackling or adapting to or mitigating the effects of climate change and how we all feel them. Um, Thank you all for sharing such valuable insights, such as the importance of building trust and how it actually takes time. Decision making processes should take time and should involve a wide scope of the population, from the local forest communities to the investors to the local and regional and national governments. We've also talked about multifunctional services and the various ecosystem services that the forests provide beyond just wood or wood-based products to be extracted and created from, and how we should value these ecosystem services and reward the communities that are keeping these landscapes alive. So now over to Abdel Karim, Tony, and Lei for any final messages before we wrap up this conversation. Tony, over to you. Could you unmute, please?
Yeah, I have to improve my skills regarding technology, maybe. So the next time. And anyway, no, my message, joke apart, is that I think that because a lot of reason, we are convinced that humanity is facing of the most complicated periods in its history. And really, we are called up to make the right decision for our future. At the international level, during conference, workshops, seminars, we often heard that we have to learn a lot by indigenous people and local communities about the way to recover a right balance between human being and nature. But sometimes I perceive this as a good sentence to say without a deep willing to move in that direction. So if I had to choose just one thing to do on a global scale, I would say that it's extremely important to work at all levels to stop the urbanization of society and build a new way of experiencing rural life and managing the landscape, where everyone, and not just defined as stakeholders, but rather as protagonists who will live and inhabit these places, can have equal dignity in the designing and building a balance between the needs of the nature and the needs of the community. I think that is a not so easy aim and objective, but we can work about this.
But it's a beautiful and inspiring message. Thank you so much for sharing, Tony. Abdel Karim, what would you like to share with our audiences after our conversation today?
I think through the philosophy of the forest model, I think it has shown that the deep learning it's happening at the level of the local population that can feed our systems in how we see nature, and then we adapt. And for anything that we need to transform or enter into the system, we need to make sure that it's being adapted and then communicated about. And then you have the buy in of the local population first, then the local authorities, then the higher decision making.
Very important to work on a bottom up approach rather top to bottom approach. Lei, what would you like to share with us after our conversation today?
Yes, I learned that from our conversations that we all care deeply about forest and landscape. However, caring is not may enough, right? To truly keep our landscape alive, we need trust and truth, I would say. Yeah, being an honest broker as a research institute as well as the community members matters a lot. Bringing people together, communities, policymakers, and investors. not to forget, and making sure that everyone has a voice and the facts are clear. In this case, and I would like also to touch base on the evidence base, shaped by real data, how forest, water, people are connected. Yeah, because when science and integrity work together and landscapes stay healthy, livelihoods improves and policy can be also sustainable. What we are working on in Ecraft and how we connect people, knowledge, and action. So we make sure that our landscape and our decision making to guide the guidance the landscape can stand strong for the generation.
Thank
Thank you,
you all.
Andrea.
Thank you so much, Lay, Abdel Karim, and Tony for joining this conversation. And thanks everyone watching us over on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, and for joining this Talk Landscape episode. That's a wrap for today. But I would like to remind you all that the GLF will be present at the COP30 in Belém, Brazil, with two incredible events. The first one will be on the 17th of November, and that will be the GLF Climate Hybrid Conference, streaming live from Belém, Brazil, through to all of the world online. So you can check out the event and register for free to watch it on the 17th of November. And on the 18th of November, we will have the 8th GLF Investment Case Symposium, also streaming live from the COP30 in Belém, Brazil. So make sure to register online for free. And don't miss this important conversation on how we can transform, build new economic paradigms for people, for nature, and the planet. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.
Want to know the hottest commodity to invest in? Want to know the hottest commodity to invest in? That's right, nature. Find out why on the 18th of November at the 8th GLF Investment Case Symposium, live from Climate Conference COP30 in Belém, Brazil, and online. From green bonds to biodiversity credits, discover how finance can protect ecosystems, empower communities, and deliver lasting returns. Claim your free ticket now and join us to start shaping the future of sustainable finance.